Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to HeroesMart Homeschool Academy. This is Mr. Lan, and I will be walking you through 4th grade social studies week number 5 today, which is still going to be in the history part of the curriculum of 4th grade social studies. Today, we're going to be talking about Texas Revolution Part 1. We're going to be talking about how Texas revolted against the state of Mexico to become an independent nation, and then later was annexed to the Union of the United States. So the state of Texas is one of the latest states to be annexed to the United States. It was annexed in 1836, which means it was joined together with the rest of the states, like the northern states of the early colonists back in 1836. But it wasn't without a couple of events. So let's look at those events. So in 1820, a U.S. citizen named Moses Austin asked the Spanish government in Mexico for permission to settle in Texas. And he was granted that permission, but he died soon afterwards because of a disease. And then his son, Stephen F. Austin, took over that settlement project. In 1821, Mexico gained independence from Spain, and Stephen Austin negotiated with the new Mexican government to settle 300 families at the Brazos River. The Brazos River in Houston, right? So, so Stephen Austin continued the project that his father started. And the terms of agreement were that the settlers were going to be Catholics, but Austin's settlers were mainly Protestants from the southern United States, but they were forced to become Catholics, maybe under the guise of wanting to comply. They became Catholics, but at the back of their hearts, they still wanted to carry on with their denominations like the Anglicans and the Methodists. But other U.S. settlers arrived in succeeding years, thereby making the Americans outnumber the Mexicans. And that's what happened over there. And in 1826, Fredonian Rebellion started. So there was a conflict between the Americans and the Mexican settlers because the Americans were becoming large and larger ultimately than the Mexican settlers. So in 1830, the Mexican government moved to stop the influx of the American settlers, but they couldn't do that. And in 1833, Stephen Austin was imprisoned for calling the statehood of Texas without the consent of the Mexican government. So he came here to try to settle Anglo-Americans, and Anglo-Americans started influxing into the state of Texas and ultimately became the larger tribe, so to say. And they decided we are going to be a state, we are going to be a nation by ourselves. But then he was imprisoned because of that. In 1835, Stephen Austin was released from prison, and in 1834, actually, Santa Anna became the dictator of Mexico and moved to squash the Texan rebellion. In 1835, Anglo-Americans, the American Protestant settlers, 50 miles of San Antonio, fought against the Mexicans and routed them in the Battle of Texas Revolution. A provisional government was set up in Texas under Sam Houston. And we know that General Santa Anna came down to Texas, specifically to what we now know as the Alamo, to squash the rebellion. I believe he killed a bunch of people. But then Sam Houston, who was the governor of Texas, heard about that, and he led an uprising that ousted the Mexicans and formed and gained independence from Mexico. And then Texas became an independent nation in 1836 under Governor Sam Houston. All right. So let's answer this question over here just to remember a few facts about it. Who led Mexico to squash the American rebellion in Texas? Well, you can remember General Santa Anna, okay, led Mexico to squash the rebellion of Anglo-Europeans, okay, and he was successfully able to do that. But then Sam Houston, maybe like 6 weeks later, 6 weeks later, led counter you can say counter war against Santa Anna and defeated him. Okay, at the Battle of the Alamo. Alright. So just a few facts over there for you to remember what we talked about. So today we talked about Texas Revolution Part 1. We're going to be talking about Part 2 in next week, so please make sure you tune in. Well, I want to thank you boys and girls for joining me today. Remember, God cares about you and so do we. Until next time, bye-bye.
I'll be your hero's buddy, and as you study with HeroesMart, I will be your friend. So don't you worry.